All right, I'm back. So we are live streaming and recording this. We'll be putting this up on YouTube after the fact. So thanks for joining us, everybody, on a Tuesday evening with about a dozen days left until Christmas. We're joined tonight by James Neal, who's the Canadian brand ambassador, not just for Bowmore, but as you can tell from the bottles behind him, also Lafroig and perhaps to a lesser extent, Auchentoshan, Glengarry, to name another few. Yeah, we've got an awesome lineup for tonight. I don't want to take too long, but we were trying to buy a bit of time for a few more stragglers to log in. And if you weren't in here a moment ago, we did update the lineup slightly. We are doing 15, 18, 25, 30, and then Aston Martin's edition 2, but followed by 3, and then wrapping with the timeless 29 year. So a little different than we put it out there earlier. Since we've got you as a captive audience, just quickly highlight some of the first January tastings that we've got up online. We've got some Scotch Malt Whisky Society tastings coming up, and we've just added a second in-store seating. Harmony and Kurt have got a Blinded by Bourbon tasting coming up, which hopefully Evan's listening to the live stream now, and he's going to update the photo on this because it's still the lady in Porto drinking port, which has nothing to do with bourbon. Our friend Deborah from Glenfarclas is going to join us for a family cast tasting, including vintages going back all the way to 79. We've got an 83, a 79, mostly from the summer 2022 releases, but that's going to be an awesome tasting. Then we've got a bunch of stuff in store. Obviously, there's the MS Calgary Whiskey Festival, January 18th. If you don't have tickets, they are available, and we put master classes up Friday, so there's 9 master classes running during the show this year. Right after that, after Victoria Whiskey Festival, we're doing a Holyrood launch tasting here in Calgary with Holyrood Distillery. Celine from Elixir Distillers is coming to do the Macbeth range with us, 183 years of whiskey, including, I should add, a 31-year-old Glengarry, but also an old Ardbeg, an old Benriach, and some other cool stuff. So that's going to be an awesome lineup. Our Burns Bash, which got bumped by a day in order to accommodate the Macbeth tasting. We were getting into the politics of this the other night, as did England's bard trump Scotland's bard. We won't delve into politics there, but maybe there was a little bit of that. Sean's got a rum tasting coming up, which we'll get a proper photo up for shortly. We were just waiting for a few bottles to come in. And then there's more coming down the line, including our Doc Swinson's bourbon barrel launch. So those are all things coming up in the very near future, the not so distant next year. So check them out. And one last thing as well, while you're here, there will be an Ardbeg bottle launch tomorrow morning email. So stay tuned for that. There's a new limited edition coming out just in time for Christmas, or just in time to get in before year end. One or the other. I'm not entirely sure, but it's coming. So we might as well get started here. I love Bowmore, as many people know. It's been a favorite distillery of mine for a long time. The #1 vaults at Bowmore are probably my favorite place in the entire whiskey industry to visit. I have some great memories there. Some customers, I don't think any who are on this call tonight, although actually one of them might be. I saw Al Edgeworth was here. Were the first people outside of Morrison Bowmore to sample the white Bowmore. It was a little treat for us in the #1 vaults back in the day. And Bowmore made me a keeper of the Quake a dozen odd years ago, which is pretty awesome. So I got a strong tie to the brand. I love the whiskey, love the distillery. I have a bit softer spot for it than some people who maybe don't love its, floral lavender perfume years as much as others. But it's a cool distillery, and I'm thrilled that we've got James Neal, the brand ambassador for Bowmore, joining us tonight for the tasting. James, thanks for being with us, and I should note you are muted, so you will need to unmute yourself, but thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much, Andrew, and it's great to see everybody here. And Andrew, I guess we'll be seeing each other soon in Victoria anyways, I'm sure, as you are usual in our World Whiskey Debate, which is where I last saw you.
Yeah.
Yeah, the lavender and the soap tasting notes that come up from the early 80s is always a thing. And there's actually a really funny story that during when everything is sitting in its mash tun, it's going through that fermentation process. What a lot of people didn't realize is, the same way you put that wooden spoon over your pot so it doesn't boil over. Well, in many distilleries, they would put a bar of soap above the fermentation mash tun so it didn't boil over. So when we say, like, literally, sometimes there could be soapy flavors within your whiskey if they ever used way too much soap, which is not likely, but that's actually how they stopped the overboiling in the early days. Many distilleries, when they didn't necessarily manage the process of making whiskey as great as we do now.
Yeah, I guess they didn't have the switchers in place and whatnot, but I mean, a lot of distilleries have used it until recently. Whether that's the only cause of that note, because I mean, other whiskey distilleries have a lavender note to them. There's other whiskeys that sort of have that hint in there, but yeah, we don't need to go too far down the lavender train, although we might be on the lookout for some of it in a couple of the older bottlings here tonight. But the 15, James, if we're going to start off there, I'll put it up on the screen. As much as the 12 is kind of the entry level, release, to my mind, the flagship in the range is kind of the 15. It's a bit of a step up. I think the quality is there, and it's, for the longest time, it's been fairly reasonably priced compared to other 15-year-old distillery bottlings. Admittedly, inflation things creep it up a little bit, but do you want to introduce us all to the 15?
Absolutely. So what's so important about Bowmore when we look at the brand? The Bowmore that you're enjoying is aged in ex-bourbon American oak barrels and sherry oloroso cask. Its final 3 years, you see that finish in that sherry, so it just shoots this bright sherry cask finish to it that really stands out. Bottled at 43% ABV. Bowmore 15 typically at the end of many tastings, even with some of the big hitters, you can get into some of the ones here that are going to shine, and Bowmore 15 becomes kind of everybody's favorite one of the night. It becomes a very quick go-to, and if you're a non-single malt Scotch drinker, Bowmore 15 is a great gateway into peated single malts as well. Some of the rich sherry notes kind of bring some flavor notes back a little bit more into some of the other categories that many bourbon drinkers might be able to distinguish and appreciate a little bit more so.
Yeah. Well, you're getting, I mean, obviously Bowmore more lightly peated than maybe the standard or the average Islay malt, if you're at least talking exclusively about the peated ones. But it's also, that introduction of sherry cask, I think, also helps to pull back that peat a little bit and mellow it a bit more. And yeah, it's just got a rich profile. Some nice sherry tones in there, chocolate, candied fruits, but it's intermingling nicely with the smoke and that little bit of like sandy, salty tones as well too.
One of the things I try not to do, and I'm going to leave that to Andrew, you and your team, is when I take anybody through any tasting, I really want the group to come up with some of the tasting notes and bring those out into the game. If I said it tasted like sunshine and rainbows, many of you would be shocked that I tasted a rainbow. It's so believable sometimes when somebody says, "Oh, I get notes of rainbow," and people are like, "How the hell do you know what a rainbow tastes like?" I don't. I've never tasted one. I can't taste the impossible, but I don't like saying those things because people directly connect it right away. And I want you guys to use your experience and your palate. We've all eaten different things today, so each of us will pick up slightly different notes. It's great if we share that. Exactly. Taste the rainbow Skittles. Share some of your ideas in the chat, just as you're going through each whiskey tonight. It'll make this a lot more engaging and fun for you all.
Yeah. Maybe I'll start. Harmony, do you want to chime in on the Bowmore 15? Do you want to share any of your thoughts on
it? Yeah, sure. It's very sherried for me. I'm getting more sherry notes on this than like many of the bourbon notes that I would expect for a 12-year ex-bourbon. But yeah, like dark fruits. Obviously, you got that nice lush peat in there. but it's not very medicinal. It's quite soft. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's like a hint of matchstick in here for me, but yeah, tons of fruit.
Good call
My
out there,
first
Harmony.
whiskey.
That the longer you age, literally any whiskey, the peat notes go down even more so. The rich tannins through the barrels are going to overpower that peat note, so you're going to get less peat influence, and then also that rich sherry influence. You're going to bring out some of the more chocolate flavor profiles that you're going to be able to dig in there.
Kurt, you want to chime in?
Bowmore's back where they should be. It's pretty cool. It's pretty exciting. I agree with Harmony. There's a little bit of gun smoke on this one for me. But behind it all is what Bowmore should be and hasn't been or wasn't for like a really big period there coming out of those 80s and 90s times. This is like smoky porridge with blueberries and licorice and stuff for me. Really, really pretty. For a long time, I kind of just glossed over the 15 because I prefer the 12 and 18, but 15's on point right now. Really great this one.
Sean?
Yeah, I agree with Harmony with the whole medicinal part on this one, but it's funny because when you say medicinal, you think of a different distillery. That might be like hospital medicinal. This is almost like you're homesick. You like Vicks Vapor Rub, some eucalyptus lozenges in there, and maybe like a hot toddy with some not just citrus, but maybe like a scoopful of marmalade or something in there. It's pretty wicked. I don't know. I'm not sure if it's my palate today, but I might be a little blind to any of the gunpowder matchstick on this one.
Yeah, same here. I'm not personally picking that up, but I also had COVID 10 days ago, so I'm not to say there's a chance I might be missing it. Sean, I don't know if you were with us way back when we had the lamb rig as an exclusive. But yeah, we had for about 2 years this cast strength version of Bowmore 15 that was originally made for Sweden called lamb rig as an exclusive. And there you go. Kurt's got one on his shelf. And it was a hit because it was this whiskey, this style, but at like full strength. And I really hope they bring something like that back because no one else really had anything like that at that point in time.
That lamb rig is one very, very fun expression. Kurt, that's a great bottle. If you ever decide to open it, make sure you call me when I'm in town.
Yeah, but anyway, nice tasty start there. Let's move on to the 18. 18 again, I think compared to some of the other official bottlings, especially, well, there's not many Islay distilleries that have a core 18-year-old bottling that's regularly available. I'm assuming somewhat still in that same style, just a little bit more mature. It's a whiskey that I haven't had probably in a tasting in at least a year or so. So I'm excited to revisit it. But James, why don't you give us a little intro on the 18?
The 18-year-old is, for me, this starts really talking to where Bowmore starts to really define itself. So we have our 4 core pillars that we live with at Bowmore, and one of them is ages like no other. When we get into this 18-year-old, I think this is where we start seeing the first signs of the tropical fruit notes that Bowmore is very famous for. And this is where it starts really to shine through with the 18-year-old. And it's just something that, this is like my little tropical fruit parfait for dessert. All these brilliant notes on there that really start coming out. I think this is the beginning of it all for Bowmore, in my honest opinion, where we start translating to as we go through the next series of whiskeys. You're going to start being able to pick up on that tropical note piece a lot easier, I think. And this is where it all starts.
Mm-hmm. Kurt, why don't I start with you this time? Thoughts on the 18?
It's kind of like I mentioned this before when we talked about the strand. It's like black currant cough drops for me. A lot of kind of jammy notes, and it's like you made a fruit tart, like a cherry tart, a mix of butter tart, cherry tart, and it's when the tart kind of boils over in the oven, and you get that little bit of burnt stuff going on with it. I get a little bit of that. It's really pretty, really fruity. Like James says, it's leaning into the deeper fruit tones now, which is where we're starting to get excited.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some nice salted caramel and chocolate on top of that. And it's actually the sherry again, I think is sort of masking that peat note even more because I find the peat in this one is almost imperceptible. And I think it's because you've got that nice weighting of sherry on top. Harmony, do you want to chime?
Yeah, this one feels a little bit more completed for me. Not just so woodsy, but tons of fruit, stewed fruit. I got like barbecued pineapple on the nose, or you had that brown sugar on it and you put it on, and like Kurt said, it's starting to bubble and burn a little bit. The finish is nice. You get a little bit more of that like plums, prunes, jammy notes, and just like a little bit of like burnt orange zest in there on the finish for me, almost like that old fashioned nose,
Mm.
but on the finish.
I
It's
can
really
find
nice.
I can see the old fashioned on the palate for sure.
Hmm.
And kind of like a chocolate old fashioned. Sean, you want to chime in?
Honestly, Harmony kind of just mimicked everything I was thinking about it. Like as soon as she mentioned grilled pineapple in the chat, I was like, yeah, like even a hit of like fresh cinnamon on top or something like that, some sort of spice that started to get charred off a little bit. But yeah, I don't have too much more than that.
Cool. Um, James, question for you, and this, I know this could sometimes be an awkward one because people really love their brands sometimes, and they, maybe sometimes they want a little more than they feel that the producer's willing to step up to. But Steve's asking, is there a reason for the 43% ABV as opposed to say bumping it up to 46?
One of the biggest things when you have a brand that you're building and it's part of your core range, you need to keep it you need to keep that product line uh, as friendly as you can to the 80% of the consumer base. We can't, unfortunately, appease everybody and have a perfect world where you just start bumping up. So that's where we have our special releases come into play, to be very honest and answer that. So the 43 is kind of what has worked for the 18-year-old for years. And we're going to maintain that consistency throughout the process of our core range, especially. Even our 25-year-old that we're about to get into, that's at 43%.
Mm-hmm.
So that number seems to work very well in our core range lineup, and 12 right up to 25 is part of that core range.
Okay. Very good. Anybody, any other thoughts you want to share on the 18 before we move on? I mean, I think it's just, it's very well put together, very well balanced. And I'd agree with the comment Kurt made earlier. I think this is, and he was making it in reference to the 15, but I think this is the best the 18 has been drinking in years. And it's not to say that it's been bad. It's just, this is, it's cool to see it at this point because it's really, it's meeting expectations and maybe even exceeding them a little bit when we find a lot of other distilleries that we love have been maybe not meeting expectations in recent years. So especially for like their core range and their medium high-end bottlings. So, which, let's be honest, that's what the Bowmore 18 is. I mean, I think for the crowd of people on this tasting and for the people, my colleagues who work in whiskey, the 15 and the 18 might be the starting point for us, but for most consumers, it's not. So anyway, I think that's drinking really well. 25, I'm excited to try again. The 25s, certainly about a decade ago, were definitely in that sweet lavender territory. And I know some people have used a much less progressive way of describing that, which we won't get into tonight. But yeah, why don't you introduce us to the 25-year-old, James?
So the 25-year-old is where we really start getting into some rich complexities. And this is where we stand by that pillar. We start maturing like no other. Like this is really where we get into a really much more complex whiskey. Your team's, by the way, spot on, and they're doing a fantastic job on kind of being able to pick out these flavors. So great job to your entire team there, Andrew, because they're knocking it out of the park. But this one for me, the 18 is that beginning stage of that tropical fruit note. This continues that, that search for that true luxury brand that's going to come out and offer a quarter of a century whiskey at a different flavor note for sure. And, you know, we're literally looking at the first 3 whiskeys we've tasted have all used the same types of barrels. The percentage of influence in the Sherry Oloroso in each of them is slightly varied and different. But that's what makes this such a great experience, where we can get so much more flavor as we go deeper and deeper down this path.
Yeah, well, it's definitely going more tropical. There's some nice deep caramel tones there. I know the official tasting note says stewed fruits, and I can see that, but we're getting into like sticky toffee pudding, some nice creamy tones in there. And there's even like there's a tartness to the fruit tones in there, like kind of a orange heavy mincemeat pie on the nose as well. Sean, I'm going to start with you this time because we started with Kurt and Harmony previously. Why don't you lead us off on this one?
Sure. Good call on that mincemeat, by the way. Yeah, you were saying like tangier fruit. There's almost like a slight vignousness. Like I would almost like say like port poached pear or something like that, where it's a little bit more of that desserty kind of tone. But I maybe it's just me. I wasn't picking up as much of the perfumey note on the nose, but as soon as it hits the palate, of course, it's like quite front and center. Nosing it, I was thinking back, like there was a time when I could blind this, like 2015, 2014, like pretty easily, but just on the nose, I'm not really sure if I could right now. Maybe it's just tonight. Kind of tough to say.
Yeah. Harmony?
Yeah, I would agree with you, Sean. Like nosing it still has some remnants of Bowmore, but the minute it hits your palate, you get that floral kind of flavor, that's signature that really reminds you of where you are. For me, it's big toffee, like hazelnutty, Christmas spices. Like it's the perfect season to be drinking this whiskey, I would say.
Yeah, when you get to the palate, it's like someone's taken that mincemeat pie and they've like sprinkled candied fennel seeds into it. So you're getting these little bursts of like sweet and lavender, but it's not one of those like huge floral bombs that we've had in past decades. There's still that bit there. And I mean, I think for me, there's something comforting about that. Like, and I've said it before, like I personally like that style to a point. And definitely have a soft spot for it. Kurt, your turn, your thoughts.
I think I would blind this one. However, that's based on having drunk a lot of Bowmore going back a very long time, not from recent years. This is unquestionably the best 25 I've had in a very long time. This is awesome. I'm kind of regretting not having grabbed on this. I'm getting more peat here than I did on the 18. I think the 18 is kind of masked with heavier sherry influence. Seems more bourbon casky in the mix. I don't know, or just maybe more active bourbon, more tired sherry. Bigger spice, more tobacco, a bit of soil or dark earth. And I totally love that kind of bitter, or not bitter, but like that tangy kind of sour note you were talking about, Andrew. Palate, it's coming at the back end where it's a little bit like that pink grapefruit kind of thing coming on, which is what Bowmore gets really awesome. It starts to be, this age into the 40s. That note is absolutely one of the most like coveted notes I can imagine.
And Kurt, to your point, you're spot on, and it's a great call out that this is much more heavier on the American oak influence than the European oak. That's what that complement, and it goes back to Harmony's comment as well. The nutty hazelnut spices, that's just that complement of that European oak. And that European oak starts to bring out those nutty and more baking spice kind of notes into the whiskey. And that's towards that finish that really shine.
Yeah. And James, you should know you're in friendly territory here when it comes to when Kurt says tired old sherry casks. We don't mean that as an insult. It's especially when we're getting to older ages. This is coming from a crew where we love geeking out on second, third fill, 30-year-old whiskeys and getting that spirit character, but then also that esterification and those tropical fruit notes developing, because some of them, I think Bowmore, to their credit, especially that number one Vaults Warehouse, has a bit of a history of helping to sort of nurture those notes, but a lot of that comes down to casks. And I think American oak definitely allows more of that to come through than active European oak does, or active ex-sherry.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But
And I never took offense to that. The only thing tired in here is my hair.
yeah, it's well, I mean, my body's starting to get tired, but that's a whole other thing. I've been overusing it. That would be like an awesome whiskey to end a tasting on, but it's not where we're ending here. So we're moving on to the 30-year. Now we're starting to jump up in price quite a bit on these. Obviously, there's a bit more rarity. And before we even get to this, I do want to say, and I think a lot of people have heard me say this many times before, my one and only regret, and it wasn't even the Black Bowmore when that was available for $4,100 a bottle that I couldn't afford one. But going back even further than that, my biggest regret was not having $200 20 years ago to buy a black ceramic Sea Dragon 30-year-old Bowmore, which I tried many times and loved. And there was one on the shelf, and I kept thinking, oh, if I've got enough money in my bank account next week, I'll buy it. But, you know, children, child support payments, rent, it didn't happen, sadly. That was the one that got away. But I'm excited to try this Bowmore 30-year-old. So why don't you tee that one up for us?
So this 30-year-old it's a pretty special bottle if I can manage to lift it without dropping it. So number one, the packaging on the bottle is absolutely next level. This is the newest edition, so the 2022 edition. So this is literally 2,556 bottles made of this particular bottle only. This is an absolute legend. Ron Welsh, our recently retired master distiller, was a big part of this. And Ron still actually contracts with us, so he hasn't left the company. He's still with us hanging out. But this bottle here is one of his all-time favorites right now. And this is a standout. So now we've been drinking our core range at, 15 to 25-year-old. Now we're getting something very, very special. We're talking under 3,000 bottles for the entire world. And we're talking about some notes that you're going to start shining through it. We do get that lavender note in this because we definitely see some of that influence. We love it though. It actually starts to showcase. Oh, I'm cutting out. Sorry, I'll fix that, Harmony. It starts to showcase some of those flavors that really shine with Bowmore. And as we continue to go down, and we look at how we're building our brand, the biggest thing is, exceptionally expressive is a word that I would use when you get into the Bowmore 30. This is a little special bottle. And when we get into some of the other ones that aren't nearly the same price as this, but this one just shines like a true star.
There you go. Harmony, I'm going to let you lead off this time. So mix of sherry and bourbon once more. I mean, color-wise, it's definitely darker than the 25, so it looks like it's had a bit more oak interaction. But Harmony, what are you getting on this one?
It smells like it's beefier, it's fuller than the last one. You get a really pretty peat on here, but the palate for me, it's like full on like jubes. It's so vibrant and tropical, and there's a nice mouthfeel there that just feels like you're chewing the whiskey for me. It's not exceptionally like a heavy whiskey, but yeah, the fruit notes are banging in here.
Kurt.
It's less expressive than I imagined it would be. It's a little bit, to me, a little bit dumpier across the top. But the palate, oh my Lord. It's like wine gums, like those dino sour candies, those kind of sour jujubes sort of thing. There's a cool chocolatey tones, like those.
So chocolatey.
What are they? Rook House or whatever they're called, those chocolate acai berries we talked about a couple of times.
Brookside.
Yeah, thank you. There's so many great like tangy fruit tones going on there. Chocolate, ash, smoke, like banging palate, absolutely cracker of a palate.
Yeah, the fruit and the chocolate on the palate is awesome. The peat has once again become a bit of a backstory on this, and it's very, very soft, very discreet, as are those salty tones. But I agree with you, like the nose seemed a bit more closed, but the palate is just, it's rich. I mean, this is kind of, I think, what I want for like a kind of a Christmassy style whiskey is what it just comes across on my palate. Sean, what about you? Thoughts?
Before I started swirling it and like having it sit there for half an hour now, it was really boozy cherry for like really kind of gratin. Texturally, this is kind of where it gets into like kind of what I really love, and where you're getting that proper balance of sweet malt. On this one, there's that nice little hit of barrel tannin that really kind of intermingles with it, but you're getting that slight austere on the sides of the palate where it's just almost getting thin, but not quite. You're starting to see that slightly more antiqueness of it. It's it's one of my favorite things.
I'm going to add into that little Turkish delight. You get a bit of that, but not just Turkish delight, more like the Big Turk, where you've got the like, the Turkish delight center and the chocolate outside coating. Yeah, this is it's an awesome bottle. I mean, this is admittedly not everybody's price point, but yeah, it's rich, complex. It's a nice whiskey. Now, James, how do the 30-year-olds vary from batch to batch? Because obviously we've seen a 30-year-old in this packaging come out now for about 4 or 5-ish years in a row.
So this is our third or fourth release now. So this will be a part of our continual program. It's an annual release that we will do with the 30-year-old. And we're really excited about it. So do they vary? Yes, absolutely. It is very unique. So last week I did a 30-year-old side by side with last year's and the previous year's and then this year's. They're all unique. They're a little bit closer than we probably think. You're gonna have to have a pretty trained palate. You're gonna have to be in the world of where we're at right now and what we're discussing and how detailed we're getting into this to be able to even pick up all those differences. In the first release, it was definitely more floral. To be very honest, the floral just punched right through. It ended up being a beautiful whiskey. And then as we've gotten into them, I get a little bit more salinity in this one, and I can get that ocean experience of Bowmore as this has progressed. Harmony, spoiling the pup. But
really
yeah, it's for me, it's one of those things that the salinity really shines through in this one.
Now, Steve had a good question there, and I think it's an interesting one because I think Steve's question was coming from the perspective of somebody who buys a lot of single cask bottlings, and so they're wondering, like, when you're doing 3,000, how do you achieve consistency? And it's people not realizing some of the processes, especially for something like that 30-year. Bowmore is going to make that blend, and then probably it's going to do a marrying process where it's going to go back into casks that are either sort of fairly inactive or into a vat for a period before it's bottled. They don't just sort of dump everything together and put them straight into bottles. But it's an interesting point because I think most people don't think about the logistics of doing even say a 15 or an 18-year. And in those cases, like you're probably looking at hundreds of barrels being married, or casks, I should say, at a time to do a vatting, because it's not going to be, and even by some industry standards, that would still be a pretty small batch. But it's, yeah, there's an element of that. As you go up the age statement range, the batches are going to get smaller and smaller, but the process is probably pretty similar.
So it's funny you talk about that too, because when we think about the overall production of the Bowmore distillery, we're about 2.2 million liters is our capacity right now, probably producing at about anywhere from 1.9 to 2 million liters a year. Well, literally under 3,000 of that just went to one bottle, really, when we think about it. So it's you start putting that in perspective, and then you look at some of the bigger distilleries, like if you look at the big two, Glenlivet and Glenfiddich, they're producing 21 million liters a year. So 10 times the amount of production. So, you know, other than our 12 and our 15, pretty much everything that we produce after that becomes very, what could be considered small batch for sure.
Cool. All right, Aston Martin. Now, James, before we dip into these, I'm going to level with you right off the bat. I was very anti Aston Martin tie-in, mainly just because I look at a lot of these partnerships or collaborations, and I look at them maybe from a bit of a cynical standpoint, where you look at, say, okay, what's happening here? Am I going to end up being asked to pay more for something because Aston Martin's name's going on it as well? And to be fair, I've only tried 1 and 2. Tonight will be the first time I try 3. Both 1 and 2 so far have been excellent, which was very disappointing because I wanted to dislike them from my position of bias, but I like the liquid. So tell us, like, maybe a little bit about where this partnership came from, and what makes these releases unique.
Yeah, so this story is actually, and Andrew, you weren't the first person to say that to me. And Kurt, great call out. I've done a lot of work with this particular partnership, and it's gone so well now that I speak to the US side as well when it comes to this partnership based on the 2 brands. What we've done in Canada is Bowmore. For those of you listening, Bowmore on a global scale, Canada's a priority market for Beam Suntory and growing Bowmore the way we have in the past 3-4 years. And this partnership, when it started, I like F1, I like nice cars, and I said, oh, this will be cool. But when we hit the ground running, and the first release we did was the DB5, we made 27 bottles in the world. That was it. And it was our 1995 Bowmore Black Series that we used as the liquid inside that. So it was a 31-year-old liquid distilled in 1964, bottled in 1995. We rebottled that. And then we made Aston Martin, said, let's design the bottle. So Merrick Reichman's brother, Merrick Reichman is the chief design officer with Aston. He actually designed the bottle, and he took a piston from an Aston Martin DB5 car and put a crystal decanter in the top. Now, we sold 25 of those in the world, 2 in Canada. Those retailed at about $85,000 for the collectability aspect. Everything was done by hand. If you go to the Aston Martin dealership still to this day, your cars are still made by hand. So we went back into history, and a lot of things came up. Why did we choose that bottle, that liquid, and how this all came together? So when we did this partnership, we have a lot in history. When we think about our pillars, crafted with intent, exceptionally expressive, ages like no other. And then we look at Aston Martin. You're talking about one of the top quality crafts cars in the world that became so famous for many things. And 1964 was a special year for Bowmore and Aston Martin. So that's why we celebrated it with that. 1964, Aston Martin did what?
Was that the DB9?
DB5 with James Bond and Goldfinger. Became those, there was 4 cars made for that movie. Those cars are now worth over $20 million a piece. We only actually know where 3 of those are. The other one is lost to somebody, and we believe it's a Princeton, Abu Dhabi who has it, but hey. So those cars became so collected. The Bowmore Black Series that you mentioned earlier, Andrew, that became one of the most collected single malts of all of Scotland. And it did the Bowmore brand a lot of great things. So we celebrated by making that very special bottle. In a little bit, I'll even pull one out and show it to you what it looks like. Still have one here. So then we said, okay, at Bowmore, we went from coal heating to steam heating at the distillery. So we brought in an entirely new boiler system in that same year in 1964. And that's why we celebrated that first year with us and Aston Martin. Then, as we said, if they just make bottles and we just make whiskey, that's going to be a shtick, exactly like you just talked about. It's going to get boring, and we aren't going to be doing anything different. We're just going to be making whiskey as we always did with a niche little logo on it to say, hey, we're a partner. We didn't do that. Merrick Reichman actually came to the distillery and started working with Ron Welsh in creating the Master Selection. The Master Selection is a series to celebrate Merrick Reichman and Ron being masters in both their professions. Every single car at Aston Martin is built on something called the Golden Ratio. So the first release that we did, we actually want to celebrate the Golden Ratio methodology, which is the perfect science of beauty, 2/3 to a 1/3 ratio. The exact same thing my parents used to create me. So what they did
My
with this,
parents must have been more 50-50, I'm guessing.
they did a unique process that Ron's never really made whiskey this way. So the 21-year-old celebrated the Golden Ratio. And this is 60, I got to remember my numbers here. 61.8% of this is aged in a 21-year-old Sherry Oloroso and some Sherry PX barrels that we've used. We then, the remainder, that 38.2%, is made up from 6 different types of casks from 1983, 1984, and 1985. A lot of those casks are white port and other fortified wines that we had on site. So because we had those unique barrelings, this created something really unique. This came in at 51.8% ABV, and it took off. It sold very, very well for us, and we want to continue the story. So the next one that you have in front of you, which is the 22-year-old, which feel free to dive into this one now. This was crafted in the spirit of unity, and you can see on the box that all these lines are interconnecting, showing how Ron and Merrick have come together, how Aston Martin and Bowmore have actually built a true partnership, as opposed to just, let's use your logo on our product and our logo on your product. It doesn't work for us. We've never wanted to do that. What's great about this partnership, this isn't a paid partnership. We aren't paying each other. We're learning from each other in quality craftsmanship and how to continue to build this together. And we're learning from each other as two brands. And it's wild to do. So this one, 74.6% of this is American Oak ex-bourbon barrels from 2000 and 2001. The remainder of that sees a sherry cask influence to brighten that up and give it some unique flavor profiles for sure.
All right. Who's first this time? Sean, I'm gonna let you go first this time.
I like, no, am I, oh yeah.
Oh, you're good.
I'm enjoying how, well, because I think this is probably the least sherry that we've had so far, it seems, like in the lineup. And it really shows. It's very much, it really showcases a lot more of those tropical tones, like a little bit more of that kind of pineapple juice and a little bit more of those fresh whiter, a little bit of citrus, but more on that, you know, like more equatorial style fruits.
Nice.
It's
salt
also,
too.
the alcohol on it's like, man.
The final 2% is a port tawny cask finish on it.
Oh, neat.
That might bring some notes together for you.
So honestly, like I have to say, between like what you mentioned about the 21 and the 20, like the 21, like that's a really cool kind of a modern take on how you're blending it with like the majority of one, and then kind of tempering some of that sherry out with some of that those more interesting melange of casks. That's really, really cool. I didn't know that story about it. That's yeah.
What's interesting is how prominent the smoke is on this one. I mean, the smoke's almost more prominent on this than even on the 18. Like it's really, really this nice, clean, elegant wood smoke. Kurt, why don't you share your 2 cents?
Yeah, this is wicked. More expressive, coming off the 30 on the nose. Not quite as bombastic on the palate. I would have said this was really, really good, clean sherry. I never would have guessed bar casks in a million years blindly. It's super clean, which I love because I'm not a big fan of port casks. The smoky note for sure. I do think it's smokier. It's like smoked orange rind or candied orange rind that's kind of smoked. Like ginger, grape jelly, and cracked black pepper to me.
Yeah, no, it's great. Nice notes. Harmony.
No, Kurt read my mind. I was like putting it out there, like cracked pepper, cracked pepper. It's all over this for me, and yeah, it's pretty good. I like it.
Lots of fruit. The fruit's holding up to that smoke and the salt too. But like big time orange notes, really, really juicy. Nice finish. So James, one of the things you may or may not know about our team here, although we're not always uniform in our views on this, but wine casks, including ports, don't often go down well with us. And for a lot of reasons, I think a lot of companies don't do them well. Port casks are one of those cask types that I've generally not been fond of. However, most of the exceptions over time that I've had related to Bowmore port casks, like the 23-year-old, there was
Yeah.
an old, I think it was a 1989 vintage one that I've got a couple of bottles in my archive of. Like Kurt, I think you're nodding, you remember that one. That was just like, it was a gorgeous bottling. Anybody who tried it, who was a fan of sherry, would have thought it was sherry if they hadn't been told it was port. It was so well done, so chocolatey. And even going back to the old core range, and this is going back about 15 years now, the Bowmore Dawn, which was part of the core range, was a port finished Bowmore. Yeah, Bowmore, most of the port finishes I've actually liked historically have been Bowmore, but port fishes generally don't go down well with me. But yeah, I think that's another great release.
Andrew, I got a question for you. There was a sister to this bottle I've never tried it. This is the Sherry 16, 19.
Yeah.
There was a 1991 in port. Did you try that one?
I think that might be the one I'm thinking of because yeah, it was 90 because the sherry was sherry, port, and then the third one, which they changed their packaging and the bottle shape to the modern Bowmore bottle, and that one went to a wine cask. It was like a Bordeaux finish, and it was okay.
That's the Dawn Dusk Darkest series. So I think that was a different one than these ones. I've got one of those too. But these were, I think, just a couple of like small batch type 91, 90 vintages.
Well, I think the 89 might have been bourbon then, and it was like 89 bourbon, 90 sherry, 91 port. But then there was also a 92, which wasn't really part of the same grouping because the packaging changed like dramatically. But it was definitely a wine cask matured release. So, but yeah, the port one, if that's, I think you're right. The port was the 91, and that one was stunning.
Cool.
So
We need to open that one then. I didn't have to pay a lot for it, so we should probably drink it soon.
I'll be in Calgary soon, guys.
yeah. All right. So James, what's the evolution from the 22 edition 2 to the 22 edition 3?
So this is where it starts getting, we maintain a lot of complexity and a lot of differences. So it's still a 22-year-old. So a lot of people are like, well, what's going on though? What's the story behind this one? Well, this one is crafted in the spirit of perpetuity, searching for that perfection every single time over and over by both of our brands. And we wanted to showcase that in this particular liquid. This is one of my favorite liquids that we've done. Look at the coloration on this even. So you can tell this is going to be a sherry bomb because that's exactly what it is. So with this particular one, we're getting refilled Oloroso cask from 2000 and 2001. 89% of this makeup is from that series. That is then finished in a second fill PX and Oloroso butt. Then from there, 9% American oak. That American oak goes back to 1988 on this particular whiskey. And then the final That final 2% is actually the oldest whiskey that we've used in the master selection so far, and it's a 1982 sherry oak hogshead.
And was it added just to add some balance to it? What was the rationale behind adding that little bit?
Wanted to brighten it up, bring it to life, give it a bit of youth and vigor within the bottle. And I can't get enough of this whiskey, to be honest with you. I've tasted it at quite a few events, and it's definitely, it does all the things that I wanted to do for a Bowmore. This says to me Bowmore, this says to me sherry. This is right in my wheelhouse of where we should be as a brand and where we want to be going continually.
All right, Harmony, you get first dibs this time around.
Yeah, James, I love the color of this, like side by side to the 22s. They're so different. It is big, heavy, dark fruits, but also you're just leaning in a little bit into the leather, just a touch. You get that dryness there, but you still get those kind of sour fruit notes still in the mid palate on it. It's beautifully done, very well put together.
So minty, so much eucalyptus coming off of it too.
Yeah, to think it drinks at 51%, I would not have guessed this is a 51% ABV on this bottle.
James, before we move on to my other guys here, Phil and Suzanne are asking if there is another release in this series, because this is like the third. Will there be another, or is this it?
Yes, lots of rainbow in this one for sure. There is the Bowmore Aston Martin relationship will be ongoing. We initially had a 4-year deal, and that's going to continue. So you're going to see more and more things come, which I can talk about and give you a little bit of detail. Apparently my battery's running low. 1 second. And there we go. So there's lots more coming down the pipe from Bowmore and Aston Martin, which I'll save to I'll save until our last dram as we're talking about timeless when we get to indulge in ourselves for a moment. But yeah, there's lots of good things coming out of this one on the Bowmore Aston Martin front.
Yeah, cool. Kurt?
Man, it's hard picking which one I like more. This one seems a little bit heavier, a little bit darker, a little more, like it's actually a little bit closer to the Oregon style, I find. Not because it's really, really hefty peat, it just seems a little more weighty, more medicinal, like you said, eucalyptus, Andrew. A little bit savory, I find. Drier kind of smoke. I get notes of burnt pears and still notes on wine gums here. Very cool to see. I'd have to toss a coin for which one I want to drink next.
Okay. Kurt, I don't know what your thoughts on this, but what occurred to me is this would kind of be like if you were to take your warehouse tasting samples from Bowmore and marry them together, you might get something like this. Like the 16 to 18-year-old bourbon and sherry cask they have in there. And Sean, what did they have the last time? Was it a refill wine cask? Was that the third type? Do you remember?
It was a Bordeaux wine cask of some sort. I don't know if it was like refill or what though.
And I remember that you and I struggled to not hate it as much as we thought we might. That it was actually quite good.
It was the best one there. I had the same one you guys had because we went around the same time. It was Chateau Lagrange. It was a 1999 Chateau Lagrange. And I was blown away. I bottled that as my favorite too. Bowmore and wine, I was blown away with how good it was.
Yeah, I remember that because we sold that wine too, and we're like, oh, that's kind of fun. I agree with like that mint note I was getting, especially on the nose that you mentioned, Andrew. But this is definitely I don't know. I think there's some of my like older memories of at the shop too was like sherry peach, sherry Islay, like, or it was either like old sherry Port Ellen or like I think we had one of the devil's casks. Like I think might have been number 2, but it was like one of those drams that really kind of stood out to me. Obviously, that was a lot younger than this one, and this one's kind of like takes it to a different level altogether. But also totally pick up on what Kurt was saying with the drier smoke. I'm also getting it a little bit more ashy, a little bit more like a lot more charcoaly, but not bad necessarily. I think I like the 20. They're both 22 and 23. I like the 22 a little bit better.
They're both 22.
Oh,
Edition
sorry.
two and
I
edition
I like
three.
edition 2 a little bit better. Sorry.
Gotcha.
Sean, for us mere mortals that drink for a living, it would have been really simple if they'd gone 21, 22, 23 years. And then we could have all just really kept track of it very easily. But no, we got two back-to-back 22-year-olds.
Yeah, a lot of people have given us that feedback. We're well aware. We tried to put a nice gold medallion that has the number 1, 2, 3, but we should have two-toned the number on the medallion so you can actually see it, because it just gets buried in the bottle, to be honest with you. If we did that, it would have been a major, like literally some black ink on that little gold coin. It would have been way easier to identify. I'm with you on that, and that feedback's been given to the office.
Sure. Harmony, I'm pretty sure I let you chime in on this one, right? I'm losing track here. Okay, good. I just want to make sure that we're being fair here. All right, we're on to the 29-year-old timeless now. Guys, did we open 2 timeless or just 1? Like we definitely opened 1 for a tasting and did not regret it. I did resist the temptation to buy 1, although I might have a bit of FOMO on that now, but I did resist the temptation. Kurt's gonna flex. Kurt's got one of those bad boys. James, tell us a little bit. Maybe tell us a little bit about the 27 and then lead into the 29, because to be honest, the timeless came in during COVID, which was in itself sort of timeless and got lost in the morass of days that bled into each other. So why don't you tell us about the timeless series and then what's significant about the 29 over the 27?
So the timeless series for us was something that we wanted to just take a pause and do a bit of reflection when we thought about Bowmore as a brand and drinking whiskey, and we're doing all these great things with our brand, and we've got Aston Martin, we've got a lot going on. And when the timeless was created, it was literally created with the intent to just slow everything down. Every bottle, at Bowmore, we have something called the Art of Time, which is how this all came to be and came to light. And the Art of Time is really everything that goes into production of single malt Scotch whiskey. So it's about taking a moment to reflect. And when we first started the Art of Time, it comes with a 3-minute hourglass inside the box. And that's just for the nosing. Turn that timer over and enjoy the nose on the Timeless series for that 3 minutes to get into the whiskey, let it breathe, really take it in. And when we bring that all together, it really gives us something that's pretty amazing and beautiful. Now, the Timeless 27 was influenced American oak and Sherry Oloroso, 13 years and then 14 years in the Sherry Oloroso. So there was a beautiful marriage together of how it was all coming together. And the 29-year-old, it stays very much similar on that same track in having that American oak and that European oak, very balanced influence. You're going to get a lot more sherry in this one for sure, and you'll be able to pick up on that. We recently did a partnership on this one with a Polish pianist named Hania Rani. And if you could indulge me, Andrew, can I get control of the screen?
You should be able to share your screen whenever you want here, James.
Perfect. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to just play a little video. And I'd love for you guys just to take a minute. And this was a promotion that we did with Hania Rani. And the idea was we brought her out to Islay to write a song. And she's a classic pianist, trained, homeschooled and trained on piano since she was 6 years old. Her mother and father are, one's an architect and one's a doctor. So a very disciplined household, we'll say. And she just recently went on a world tour. I just was in Vancouver and Toronto with her, and we took some media people out to see the concert with Bowmore Timeless. And it was a pretty great experience. So I'm going to play a little video for you. Take in the music. The music that's written at the Bowmore Distillery is to really showcase the nature and the beauty of Islay. And for, you know, everyone who's been there, this might help reflect on that. And when you listen, close your eyes, just listen to the music, and think about that one moment this week. For each one of us, it's going to be different. It's a self-indulgent moment you're allowed to have right now as you smell the whiskey. That's what we wanted to create, was a sensorial experience that kind of took you into a different space. You know, if I think about this weekend, I go back to my son playing a basketball game. He scored 9 of the 15 points for the team. He had a great game. That's my win. And that's what I just want to escape to. So I'm going to share my screen here, if I can figure out how to. I used to be really good at this during COVID. Then I forgot how to do everything. Oh, here we go. Perfect. Share sound as well. You always got to click that button. So there we have it. Just a great video that we were able to do. And that song was actually, she was writing that song and she got stuck and had writer's block. And then she came back and couldn't finish the song for years. And we brought her out to Scotland, put her on Islay, got her to hang out at the distillery and understand what Bowmore was about. And she was able to totally just escape and connect with the ocean waves, the grass, and standing out in the peat bog. Like, it's wild what we did for her. And she was able to finish this piece, and it's been a beautiful piece that, like, it truly is kind of mesmerizing. Listen to that song during the nosing of your whiskey and kind of self-indulge. This is a moment for you, and that's what Timeless is about. So that's what we wanted to do when we created this series. And, it was just something different that created a sensory experience for our consumer.
Yeah, very interesting. All right, so Timeless 29, did we get into the difference? Like,
very similar to make up to the, so we have a very heavily sherry influenced single malt with this particular one. Not it'll be a little bit more sherry influence than the 27. That'll be the biggest difference in this particular one. This does punch at cask strength. Mm-hmm. So, and there's only 3,000 bottles of the Timeless, which I do not have behind me.
Mm-hmm. All right, I'll throw that up on my screen here. So we're on to the Timeless 29 here. And this one, I'm assuming, also comes with a little hourglass, does it?
Comes with a full hourglass. All the Timeless series will have that hourglass inside it.
All right, sharing my screen here so we can all see it. So this is it here. Similar packaging. Yeah, different profile. I'm trying to think like and my team here might have to back me up on this, but I seem to remember the 27 Timeless going into much more sort of tropical territory than this one does, which is sort of more muscular, chocolatey, earthy. Sean, I'm going to start with you randomly for no reason.
Nosing this for the first little bit, it was like funny. It's blown off since, but it was very it was very kind of citric, and it was almost like nosing a sangria in a way, but a sangria that somebody like dumped cigar ash into or something like that. It was a very much like a tobacco like smoke on the nose. But after kind of swirling it around, kind of like tasting, it's been it's kind of faded away, and it's really kind of enveloped more typical sherry notes. But I mean, incredibly well done. Like it's very, I don't know. We don't really get a lot of sherry like this anymore, so it's kind of a very pleasureful kind of experience.
Well, it reminds me, like, the funny thing is, it actually reminds me, as much as it is a great sherry matured whiskey, the synergy with the sherry is kind of interesting because it reminds me of some of those like saltier styles of sherry, like the profile of actual proper sherry. And like it's quite clean as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, it's like that dark without being over the top sherry. Harmony.
Mhm. First, I would like to say, James, I am also experiencing some sort of mind block that I could probably use a trip to Bowmore to release.
And Harmony, you'd be
I'm
prepared to
having a
sit on the
very hard
beach.
time finding tasting notes for this very timeless whiskey.
And you'd sit on the beach patiently and listen to the waves, right?
Very patiently. Yeah, I might even learn an instrument while I'm there. But no, this is I like initially it was like a very on the nose, tons of raisins, tons of chocolate, more of that orange zest coming through. And on the palate, it's just very nice. As Andrew said, it's very sherried in a very nice way. And then you get these nice like cocoa notes and salty peat, and it's quite nice. Yeah, very nice.
Curtis?
I'd call you Andrew, but that's what you go by.
Don't call me Drew.
I'll call you.
Or Andy. Andy's like even worse. If you go to Andy, we're not on speaking terms.
Okay, we can be a little bit here, right? So you know the sign I put in the cabinet at work, Andrew? Andrew wanted some attention brought to one of our store casks, so I took an image of the Buddy Christ from Dogma and I put Andrew's face on it and stuck it in the cabinet. I wanted to call it the Andy Christ, but I figured we were kind of.
That's too sacrilegious, Kurt. It's too
Yeah.
sacrilegious.
Anyways, moving on. I didn't do it, so I guess I just said it out loud, so that's kind of like I did do it. This one's a little bit tighter wound on the palate than the last couple were, but everything about it is really pretty to me. So just to combine tasting, nosing notes, it's like coming through shea butter. Everything's got like a kind of creamy kind of shea butter note to it. It's like when you put a rock in your mouth. Did you ever, like when you were kids, or when you needed to sake thirst if you were camping or whatever? They're slightly waxy. I get some of that Maillard reaction, a bit of like burnt duck with like a reduction or something like that. And it's like a kind of a chocolatey slide into those tangy notes at the back end. And I do, like you, Andrew, I think I remember the 27 being more tropical. And I think more reviews that have said that one is closer to like the old school Black Bowmore kind of style without reaching it than this one is. But this is my jam. This is awesome.
Well, I think this is like a collaboration dram between like Glenfarclas and Bowmore. Like this is where like if you get like the baby child of those two distilleries, you'd get something like this. So it's a great balling. All right. So one of the things we like to do here, James, is we have what we call our speed round, where we go back because we recognize that the whiskeys will change in the glass and our perceptions of taste will change as we go. Sometimes the speed round gets stuck in the mud because we go down a rabbit hole or take a path that we saw that we couldn't resist. But we're gonna try to stay on it. So, guys, this is how we're gonna do it. It's gonna be ladies first, Harmony, then Kurt, then Sean. Speed round on each of the whiskeys. So I'll just call them out. Starting Bowmore 15, go. Harmony.
It's woody, it's gone flat, and I missed the 29.
It's kind of like somebody farted in a Colonel's popcorn shop, like with the caramel corn and all those things.
Why are so many of your tasting notes?
That's only the second time. That is only the second time that's ever come up.
This is memorable though.
But also like, what did Fat Bastard say? Everyone loves their own scent. So anyway, Kurt.
That's where you drop the mic. I don't know what to say after that.
What's
Yeah.
your scent, Kurt?
It's gone a little flat, like Harmony said, but it's still pretty. And you have to go back and go, okay, we just tasted like ridiculous thousands of dollars worth of whiskey here. Come back to this with an open mind and realize you're assessing a 15-year-old, not quite flagship entry level, but not far off it either. It's a good
Tough
whiskey.
crowd.
It's just gone a little flat.
Yeah, it's a tough crowd. All right, Sean.
It's crazy how much the nose really just turned into those caramel cubes in the clear wrapping. Like it really just kind of, yeah. I mean, it's a very almost like on a base level, but I mean, still, I would have it over many other drinks.
Yeah. All right, back to the Bowmore 18, Harmony.
Oh, it's like creamy and caramelly and a hint of fudge in there, and that's just on the nose.
It's held up remarkably well, at least on the palate.
Yeah, it has. It's still fruity.
Fruity, chocolatey, little bit of gentle peat and salt. Kurt?
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. I was going to say the same thing. Palate is held up really well. Nose isn't even that shy at this point. It's still doing well too, but the palate is like vibrant at this point.
Okay. Sean?
The nose stuck around with like a unsweetened cherry Kool-Aid powder. The palate stuck with a healthy dose of leather, actually more than the first time I got it.
Cool. Okay. 25-year. Harmony.
Oh, it's so like tropical to me, like pineapples and wine gums, as Kurt said. There's almost no peat on this, or I'm just peat blind, but
It's very mellow. Pineapple, potpourri, fruit, salt, caramel, lovely. Kurt?
And what an exceptional nose. I'm so happy with this 25. Like I said, better than it's been in as long as I remember. That's super cool. Palate is just a little bit more shy, still kind of ashy and stuff, but I got a big smile on my face for that one.
Sean?
The nose isn't going to sound flattering on this, but for me, it kind of turned into like a Pedialyte Ensure highball, and but the palate is definitely like stuck with that nice, robust Parma violet tone with that nice hit of sherry underneath.
Sean, I'm going to ask the question everyone's thinking. Have you actually made one of those for yourself before?
No, I have not.
I want you to buy both those ingredients and make them for the staff. I would like to see how that comes out.
First round's on me. Yeah.
First round's on Sean. Yeah. Yeah, the 25 has held up extremely well too. It's showing very well, very tropical. Love the salt. It's one of those ones where I hate to knock it because like the 30 we're going up to, what is it, 45.3. Like I would love to just see that a couple notches higher. I think it would just be so much more concentrated, but it's great, and it's the best Bowmore 25 has been in about a decade. I'd second Kurt on that. All right, 30-year. Harmony.
orangey, zesty, nice, light, like sweet tobacco peat for me. Nice bright acidity, like your gums are like watering. Yeah. Nice dry oak. Kurt.
Opened up brilliantly. I come back to what we said the first time around. That palette is exceptional. I get a little bit of like a a little more herbaceous on this time around, almost like a little bit of celery or something. Really clean, really kind of fresh. Very pretty on the nose, more so than it was the first time, but the palate was everything on this one.
I love it's tropical and smoky and salty and like fresh. It's just so refreshing. Sean.
I can't remember what I had on the nose there. The palate was more, yeah, as Kurt says, it leans so heavily into those like syrupy tropical notes, like really, yeah, that's all I got.
Very cool. Okay. Bowmore 22-year Aston Martin Edition 2. Only we thought to save an Aston Martin 1. Like we just think we could have had 1, 2, and 3 side by side.
Yeah, but who could tell? I'm just kidding. The packaging.
What do you think about this one, Harmony?
It's definitely more oak driven on the palate for me. But you still get some nice pepper and spices in there. Softer chocolate than I remember it being on the first time.
Yeah. Okay. Kurt?
Have you ever had those candy, the stupidest like snack to have because they're so tiny? It's like that Mitch Hedberg joke when you want to eat 1,000 or something. Yeah. There's those little sunflower seeds that are coated in chocolate and candy. It's almost like an M&M with a sunflower seed in the middle of it. I'm kind of getting a note of that on this one now. It seems a little bit drier, really pretty still, but I think I lean more towards the second one this time.
Yeah, it's funny because for me, I don't know, I'm still torn. Like the first time around, I really preferred number 2, but I have to retaste number 3. Sean?
I'm finding bourbon is still really dominant on this one. The nose was like a freshly emptied bourbon barrel, like charred wood and leftover liquor and all. Palate, very much the same thing. I'm getting a lot of like hefty wood tannin from, but like charred wood tannin, and those nice base bourbon notes. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we're on to the 22 Edition 3. I'm guessing Harmony is not chiming in this time because her screen has gone dark. So we'll start with Kurt.
Yeah, more my jam. Like I said, initially I said flip a coin. Now this one's more my jam. It seems a little bit richer. That kind of dirty aspect to it is right up my alley too. Normally I'm kind of leaning more towards clean the older I get. I don't know why that is, but tonight I'm all about the dirty girl, and this one's wicked.
That's like saucy would be a way to describe it.
It is.
Sean?
Yeah, saucy is a cool thought for it. I was thinking like well, carting back to a different tasting. I mentioned the tasting that I was wondering if this one had a little bit of like Madeira Marsala in it. The reason why is because I was getting notes similar to that boutique Springbank we had. That was a Madeira. It had some of those slightly more kind of root vegetable stewy kind of notes.
Cool. Okay. All right, 29-year Timeless Edition 2. So beefy. All right, Harmony's back. We're gonna let Harmony start.
Oh, shoot.
Timeless 29-year.
It is beefy, but I'm getting like tons of like dried cherries and like plums and jammy notes on the nose.
Okay. Kurt?
Pretty consistent for what it was the first time around. A little bit savory, a little bit sweet, jammy, like chocolatey, some kind of compote or coulis or some kind of reduction or something like that. More savory, almost leaning into umami.
Cool. Okay. Sean?
Yeah, good call on the savoriness. Like I don't think I picked up on it quite so much the first time, but it's definitely leaning into it more this time. If you're making like a Christmas pudding with like miso or something like that.
I was thinking this would just go great with your like Christmas turkey and cranberry sauce.
All right, it is time to have a vote. So everybody except for the people who've been speaking gets a vote. So I'm gonna fire up the poll here for you. Where is it?
James, while he's doing that, I have a quick question before we finish off too. It seemed like in the past, I guess I'm not sure if you mentioned how long you've been the North American brand ambassador or with them, but we've seen a lot of these special editions and limited editions that you mentioned in the higher end, like mid to higher end, when I started at the market like 10, 11 years ago, we were seeing like that was right when I'm pretty sure Tempest 2 or maybe 3 had just released at that point. Like I mentioned before, the Devil's Cast. Are we going to see some more of that range, like those kinds of ranges in that 100 to besides the vault range?
Yeah,
that might
so I'll speak to that directly. So we have we have two things coming out next year that are really going to be big drivers for us. As you guys are doing that is the bottle of the DB5 Aston Martin series that came out at $85,000. It's an actual piston from a DB5 car that's been remachined to fit a crystal decanter right inside. Then we did the ARC 52, which many of you have seen this bottle. Designed by Aston Martin, a 52-year-old single malt, perfectly balanced, ex-American Oak, ex-Bourbon, and Sherry Oloroso. Comes with the magnetic T-fob to open the lid. And I don't have good grip, so I can't do it with these gloves on, sadly, but that retailed at $125. We made 100 of those. So to answer your question, we actually have two new things down the pipe coming down big this year that are going to be the drivers for the brand. So about probably November this year, we'll see, and I don't want to promise anything, but I say November, we're still in production right now. We have an entire new series being launched, and it'll be a part of our sherry cask finish that we are doing for the Bowmore range. We'll have a 12, a 15, an 18, and a 21-year-old that are going to come out in that series. And we also, in other news, have the ARC 52 that I just showed you. Next year, we'll be launching the ARC 54 Motion, which will be a brand new 54-year-old Bowmore partnership with Aston Martin again. Now, the Sherry Cask series that we are doing, that'll be a limited run of the 12, 15, 18, and 21-year-olds. So it's going to be not nearly the same. We're probably looking at very small batches in comparison to where we are doing our core range, but it will be part of a every year growth pattern for us. So that'll give us 4 new SKUs next year alone, just in a core range in the price point that you're talking about, Kurt.
Cool.
I'm going to see if I can't show you something else. Cecile, don't tell anybody in the company I did this. Cut. Oh, maybe I can't do it. I found it on my phone. It's so much easier. I'm going to show you a picture on my phone the best I can. Oh, wait. I don't do this. Bowmore assets. I'm going to get this. We have new packaging coming out for the entire Bowmore collection. This is a big part of our future, obviously. And it's kind of a very different path of where we're taking the brand. But we're really, really excited about it. And I'm going to give you guys a sneak peek at it because we can. Probably shouldn't, but we can. All right, let's go. I'm going to share my screen one more time. I don't need audio because I'm just going to continue to speak. Share screen. I hope you can all see that. So that'll be the look of the new Bowmore 12, 15, 18, and 25. You'll notice the detail on the bottle is even different. So the bottle is changing as well. Clean, crisp, luxury. That'll be the new Bowmore 25 packaging. And for the Sherry Cask series, you won't see this package hit till 2025. But for the Sherry Cask series, you'll see it, and it'll be very similar to this package with a red swoosh, like a wave, kind of going through the number where the 12 is.
So not a Nike collaboration then.
Not a Nike, not that kind of a swoosh.
Well, still, that's exciting. I mean, you know, I'm sure there'll be people who don't like the fact that the packaging is changing, but I mean, we'll reserve judgment till we see it. You know, it's one of those things where I think one of the dangers as a brand, and maybe this is one last quick thing I'll just ask you about your thoughts, but one of the dangers as a brand is if you've had people that have been with you for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and you change something on them, it's like to some of them, they almost take it personally because they take a personal like point of pride and ownership in something. And you know, I'm sure they wouldn't be doing this without like a lot of consideration and thought.
We put a lot of work into this, and there was 5 of us that were part of a marketing call, essentially, where we just gave feedback on where we thought the brand should go. We're changing our cork structure inside the bottle as well, where we're actually going to be using recycled oyster shells from the beaches. And everything we're doing is to try and really realign the brand into a better direction. Right now, we have a lot of inconsistencies in our packaging. So we want to align the brand, create that luxury look. And in the last 4 years where Bowmore is growing, we understand that, you know, I always make the joke that the boxes currently look like my hair, dated and gray, a little bit tired and boring. We'd like to spice it up a little bit, bring some life back to the brand. And I think in terms of where we've been recently perceived in the luxury category, we needed to update. And I can honestly say this. I've been with the company for 6 years. I don't think I've ever been more excited to be a part of the Bowmore specific side of the world. And, you know, Laforgue's going through a rebrand right now as well. So it's, we aren't getting seagulls. No, we are not doing, no, seagulls. No. That all black golden sea serpent, you know, I think is exactly where we need to go. And I do hear you, Andrew. Some people are diehards and they get off my lawn kind of, but you know, where Bowmore's going right now, we have to adapt and continue to grow the brand the way we see it, and being one of the most sought after single malt scotches in the world, and that's our goal. So in order to be the most desired single malt, we're never going to be the #1 single malt. We're never going to outsell Macallan, who does 18 million liters. We don't want to. That's not our goal. Our goal is to be the most desired single malt in the market, and we want to show that luxury when we at least showcase it on the shelf. The bottle is absolutely outstanding. When you see the bottle itself, I think little nuances made a big difference. I'm really excited for it. So it's going to be a lot of work, but it's coming.
Nice. Well, I think the seagulls being referred to as the Bowmore Night Scene 25-year-old, I believe is the reference there, which I have one of those. But really, really what I wish I had was one of these. But anyway, what are you going to do? You can't hold regrets, can't go back. All right, the poll. Actually, before I share the results of the poll, I'm going to go in reverse order. Sean, what were your favorites from tonight's lineup? You get 3.
Oh, I get 3. Okay, well, I think that changes things actually. Okay, so my number 1 is the 22 edition 2 Aston Martin. That's my favorite of the night. My second favorite, I think, is the darn it, I don't know. No, I don't know. My third favorite is the 25. I think my first favorite is the 30, honestly.
Okay. Cool. Kurt.
Number 3 would be the 25-year-old. Number 2 would be the 29-year-old Timeless, and the 30-year-old. the palate alone was worth the price of admission.
Cool. Harmony.
Ditto what Kurt said. Yeah, I
Okay.
feel like an unoriginal, but they were fantastic.
Yeah. I'm somewhat with Sean. I really like those Aston Martin releases. I still think they're great, but I'm gonna go 30, 29, and then number 3 is the 25. Because I think it's, I mean, it for value, that is definitely the best value, I think, in the lineup tonight of what's available. So those are my choices. Now, James, can we put you on the spot? If you had to pick 3 favorites, what would they be?
Yeah, absolutely. I have no problem doing this game. I go 29, Timeless. Yeah, absolute love with that. Then I'd probably go to the Bowmore Aston Martin Edition 3. That's right in my wheelhouse of what I love about the Bowmore. I love that sherry, that massive sherry influence. And then I'm going to the 30-year-old.
Cool. Okay. All right. Going to look at the polls. I'll share the results now. The people have spoken. The 30-year was number 1, a tie with the 22 edition 2 and the 29-year-old Timeless for second, and no other votes for favorite whiskey. And then it gets a little more balanced on second favorite, 29 and 22 tie, this 3rd edition. 22 second edition comes in a close second, and Bowmore 25 gets a few votes. So a little bit spread around there, but man, and I know some people have already commented on this. This was an awesome lineup. This is the second time, I think, in a year and a half or 2 years we've done a Bowmore tasting. The last time was a mix of official and unofficial bottlings. We called it a Bow Marathon, and I think there was 9 whiskeys in it. We're probably due to do another Bow Marathon next year, so we'll see if we get there. But James, I want to thank you for taking part in tonight's tasting. I want to thank both you and Beam Suntory, who actually contributed to the lineup and helped keep the price down to make the tickets more affordable for people. So thank you very much for that, to both you and to Cecile. And Merry Christmas to you. I know it's probably, as you said, I'll see you in January, but until then, I hope you have a happy holidays and a happy New Year.
Yeah, thanks to everybody here for coming out and getting online and enjoying some great whiskey with us, and just, having a good chat about whiskey, because that's what, you could drink the best whiskey in the world, but if you're with the, best people in the world, it's that much better. So thank you to all.
Yeah, thanks, James. Well, listen, everybody, thank you for taking part. If we don't see you at another tasting between now and Christmas, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah to those of you celebrating Hanukkah, and we'll talk again soon. Have a great night, everybody.